carried banner. Target said no, that made the matter worse. Men without banners could be merchant, spies, killer, or all three at once. Orhan looked again at Bursa. He knew the enemy would not wait for open battle. Only the enemy had learned from the Turks. They knew that courage alone could not win against passion. So the will try to divide the camp oppositions, trust and force Orhan to make a mistake before the real fight began. This was why the night felt heavy. The battle had already started, but now, with sword, Orhan ordered Target to double the guard on the northern side and sent two quiet riders to follow the unknown man from a distance. No attack, no warning, no voice. No, he wanted to know where they want who received them. They wethers they looked toward the Byzantine gates on the hidden valley. Target nodded, he understood. Then he looked at Orhan for a moment and said that Osman Bey would have begun the same order. Orhan lowered his eyes for a breath. His name for father was both strength and pain. Osman Bey was still alive in the heart of the tribe, but his body and ground dry for years of battle. Every day more responsibility passed to Orhan. Every day more people look at him as not the son of Osman, but the man who must carry the state forward. When Target left, Orhan stayed on the hill. He remembered his father's word from away a year ago. A city is not taken only when its gates fall. A city is taken when the hearts inside lose hope and the heart outside it refuses to turn back. At this time Orhan had been younger. He had thought victory meant riding fast, striking hard and raising a banner over a wall. Now he knew that victory was slower. It was hunger in winter, patience in summer, letters sent in secret, gold refused, life uncovered, and men kept loyal when fear was easier. Bursa had taught him that down in the camp Nilufar won't move among the women will quiet strength. She did not near the wears on her face. She listened to need to the wounded, checked the stories of her and gave order in a soft but clear voice. Some women were afraid though they tried to hide it. They had heard rumors that the enemy had brought new fire weapon from the coast and other side, and secret ground had entered the era to kill Orhan before the next assault. And Nilufar heard every rumors, but she did not let fear spread. Fear was like a spark in dry grass. In nobody watched it, it could burn the whole camp. She stopped behind a young woman who was trying, bandaged with shocking hand. The cloth kept slipping from the fingers. Nilufar sat beside her and took the cloth gently. She did not shame the girl. She asked her name. The girl aside said the Scallan. Her brother was among the night guard. Her father had died in the last attack near the river. Nilufar held the girl hand for a moment and told that fear did not make her weak. Fear only shown that the heart still loved someone. What mattered was what a person did after fear came. Scallan listened and slowly became calm. Nilufar gave the cloth back to her. This time the girl tied the bandage properly. From outside the healing tent came the sound of raised voices. Nilufar stood and walked toward it. Two young ops were arguing near the supply wagons. One accused the were taking extra narrows the own unit. The old other said he had others. Their hands were near their knives and survival men had gathering around them in a camp before battle. Small fight could grow quickly. Nilufar stepped between them before any older Bay arrived. Her face was calm, but the voice her cut the noise. She asked whether Bursa would open it because two trucks fought over arrows. Both men lowered their eyes. She on them arose, belonging to accuses, not to pride. Then she ordered the supplies, counted again, and divided by need, not by friendship. The men obey. One wished to answer to Orhan for bringing shame inside the camp. As Nilufar turned away, she was Fatma Horn standing near the edge of the light. Fatma's face was pale and her head rested near the place where she had once been wounded. She watched the darkness behind the camp as it might speak to her. Nilufar walked to her and asked why she was outside alone. Fatma smiled fantasy and said she was not alone because the camp was awake, but the smile did not reach her eyes. Nilufar knew that Fatma carried a storm inside her. Some wounded close on the skin, but remain open in dreams. Fatma had seen death too closely. She had also seen Mercury from a place where she expected one cruelly. That kind of memory could confuse even the strongest heart. Fatma said she kept thinking about the man inside Bursa. She wondered if every enemy behind the wall was truly an enemy. Nilufar looked at her carefully. This is not a simple question. In war, people like clear lines, friend and few Muslim and Christians, Turk and Byzantine, but life often places human faces in the middle of those lines. A would serve a cruel lord and still save a child, and other man could pray beside you and still betray you. Fatima, that Mercury was not blindness, they called goldness. Where is appeared, but there must never forget the trap around it. Fatma nodded, though she will look troubled at the same. Nilufar told Fatma that mercy was not blindness, they could see goodness where is appeared, but they must never forget the trap around it. Fatma nodded, though she looked like trouble at the same time. Inside Bursa, candles burned in the governor hall. The stone room was good even though servant had placed braziers near the walls. Flavius stood near a long table covered with map. His armor was polished, but his eyes were restless. Around him were commanders, merchants, and men who smiled too often. They were speaking about two stories, weak point in the Turkish line and the emperor uncertain spot. The city had not fallen, but it has changed. Market were smaller. People whispered in corner. Mothers sent their children indoors before sunset. Soldiers drank more they should. The long sight has not broken the walls, but it had entered the heart of the people. One commander said the Turks would not attack before more reinforcements arrive, and others said Orhan Bey was waiting only to weaken them. A merchant with ring on every finger said the city should negotiate before hunger became worse. Flavius struck the table with his fist and the room became silent. He hated the wrong navigate. To him, navigation sounded like defeat. Dressed in clean cloth, his father had ruled before him, and his father had died with anger. His mouth, Flavius had ground up with his anger. If had fed him, taught him, and poisoned him, he wanted Orhan to pay not only for the word but for every fear the had ever felt. And yet, at a crack in Flavius that has no one in the room could see, he remembered the Turkish woman he had saved when he should left her to die. He remembered the confusion in her eyes. He remembered his own hands carrying an enemy away from danger. Since that day, his hatred had not been clean. It had mud in it. It had questions. He hated those questions more than he hated Orhan. Hatred was easier when the enemy had no face, but now the enemy had a sister, a mother, a wife, a child, a prayer, and a wound. This made war harder. Flavius did not want war to be hard. He wanted it to be simple. A door opened and a hooded man entered with these two guards. The commanders turned. The hooded man lowered his face, but Flavius knew him. His name was Hector, though some called him by other name in other cities. He was not fully Byzantine, not fully merchant, not fully soldiers. He belonged to Gaul, secrets and survivors. Men like him crossed brothers without banners and sold trust in small pieces. Flavius disliked him, but he used him in war. Every dirty knives could cut. Hector placed a small letter sponge on the table. Inside was a ring with a Turkish malt. One of the commanders leaned closer. Hector said the ring had come from a man inside Orhan. Wider circle, not a high bay, but someone close enough to her plans. The man wanted payment and safety. When Bursa changed hands, the room stood. Our traitors in the Turkish camp could be worth more than 100 soldiers. Flavius picked up the ring and turned in the fingers. His first feeling was satisfaction. His second was suspicion. Betrayal was useful, but the traitors who could one side could see the others. Flavius asked what the man has promised. Hector said the traitors could open a path near the old water channel when the trucks made their next move. The path could not bring an army through, but it could allow selected men to enter or leave unseen. It could also help them strike an Orhan supply line. Flavius looked at the map. The old water channel ran under broken ground near the western side. It has been slayed years ago, so or they had through. If he was open, the sign had a hidden mouth. A mouth could feed the city, or it could swallow the trucks. One old commander warned this might be a trap set by Orhan. Hector smiled and said all doors in war might be trapped. The question was whether they feared traps so much that they refused every door. Flavius did not answer. He ordered Hector to meet the traitors again and demand proof. Not word, not rings, not proof. A name, a signal, or a small act could not be guessed. Until then, no plan would change. Hector bowed slightly, but his eyes showed no respect. He respected only men who could pay him or kill him. Flavius could do both, so Hector remained polite. Back in the Turkish camp, the night deepened. Orhan returned from the hill and entered the main council's tent. Inside, map lay on carpets, head felt by danger and stone. Around them stood Turkish actors Bek, Nor, Boran Bey, and several younger commanders. A fire burned in a metal bowl, throwing moving shadow on their faces. Orhan sat only after the elders sat. He still honored the old way. A Bey who forgot respect would so lose loyalty. Boran Bey spoken first. He has entered Bursa before and bravely returned with his life. His voice was rough from old wound, but his mind was sharp. He said the city was weaker than before. Food was still entering, but not through the main road. Someone had found a hidden way. He could not yet prove where it was, but the pattern was clear. The price of grain inside Bursa and was not raised as much unexpected. That means supplies were coming from somewhere. Target said his scout has been unknown. Raiders near the northern road. Afterman added that our capture messengers had carried no letter, only a strip of cloth marked with three black dots. No one knew the meaning. Orhan listened without speaking. A weak leader speaks before he understands. A strong leader lets every pieces fall on the ground before he decides where the pattern began. He asked if hidden road could be connected to the old water channel. Boran's eyes narrowed. He said it was possible but dangerous. The channel had collapsed in parts. A child might pass through some places, a man through others, and if some parts. Even a snake would struggle, but if someone had cleared if the inside, it could be used by a small group. Orhan looked at the map and placed his fingers near the western ground. North Alps wanted to send men at once. He said they could seal the channel by morning. Turks disagreed. If they seal it too early, they would catch only stone. If they watch, if they could catch the hand that used it. Orhan nodded. They nodded patient. The ordered three groups placed around the suspected area, far enough not to be seen. No fire, no loud speeches. If anyone came out, they were to follow, not attack, unless the enemy moved toward the camp. He also ordered false supply movement near the southern line. If there was a spy in camp, the spy would hear that Orhan grains wagons were shifting. If the enemy struck there, they would know the leak was real. The word spy changed the air in the tent. No one liked to think betrayal could stand among them. Those were not soft men. They could face arrows without lowering their head, but betrayal was different. It does not come from the front. It share your beard first. It smiled. It called you brother. Then it opened the gate. While you slept, Orhan looked at each man and said they could not accuse us without proof. A camp that hunts shadow can destroy itself faster than an enemy army. Until proof came, every man could be treated with justice, but from the night, every word from war could be held close. After the councils, Orhan walked around to his father's tent. Two guards stood outside and boy inside. Osman Bey probed. Again, questions, age and pain had marked his face, but his presence still filled the tent. His sword rested near him, not because he needed it in that moment, but because no one could again image Osman without a sword close by. Orhan's hound sat beside him, preparing a cup of medicine. The smell was bitter. Osman looked up. Orhan entered and a faint smile touched his face. Orhan kissed his father's hand. Osman placed his other hand on Orhan's head. For a moment, no speech could equal that touch. It carried blessing, memory, and command. Orhan gave Osman the medicines and the drank it without complaint, through his face tightening. Then he asked about the councils. Orhan told him of the hidden road, the possible spy, and the false supply movement. Osman listened with closed eyes. When Orhan finished, Osman opened them and said that wall is not a wall made of stone. Sometimes a wall is a man fear. Sometimes a wall is pride. Sometimes a wall is the doubt between two brothers. If Orhan wanted Bursa, he had to break all three. Orhan said he feared the enemy less than the poison of suspicions inside the camp. Osman nodded. He said suspicious was like a wolf. If kept on the chain, it guarded the tent. It released without control. It ate the flock. At the flock, Orhan must hold the chain. He must search but not panic. Watch but on accuses, punish but only after truth. Orhan looked at her son with deep concern. She said the tribe was strong, but everyone was tried. People could be led by hope, but they could also be furnished by fear. Orhan had to give them a reason to stand until victory. Osman coughed, and for a moment the tent became tent. Orhan leaned forward, but Osman raised a hand. He did not want pity. He told Orhan that a bear should not wait for his father's shadow to cover his forever. The day could come when Orhan must stand in full sun, where every eye could see him clearly. That there was not a curse, it was the way of life. Artughul had stepped back from Osman. Osman would step back for Orhan. The state did not belong to one man. Breathe, it belongs to the accused. Orhan lowered his head. He wanted to say he was ready, but his word felt too proud. He wanted to say he was not ready, but the world felt too weak, so he said only that he would not betray the trust. Osman smiled again, but there was sadness in it. He said, "No man carried trust without trembling. If a man does not tremble, he has not understood the weight." The Osman asked to be alone with Orhan. Orhan rose, kissed his father's hand again, and he left and with a heart heavier than before. Outside, the star heads appeared. The look could far away. Orhan wondered how many warriors before him had looked at the same sky on the night before a great test. Near the horse line, a young ox named Yusuf moved between the animals with a bucket of water. He was not known by many. He had joined the camp only month before, after his village was burned near the frontier. He worked hard, spoke little, and kept his head low. Men like him were easy to miss in a large camp. That why was he had been chosen under his plan. Turning close to his skin, he carried a thin strip of cloth with three black dots. His hand shook when he touched it. He was not a burnt traitor. Few men are betrayal often begin with path, then fear, then one small choice that leads to another. Yusuf's mother and little brother were prisoners somewhere near Bursa. At least that was what Hector had told him the first time Yusuf had met him. Hector had shown him a bracelet that belongs to his mother. Yusuf has nearly collapsed when he saw it. Hector promised that they would leave it. Yusuf carried small messages, nothing serious, he had said. Only camp movement, only numbers, only small things, but small things in war are never small. Yusuf has told himself he was not betraying the tribe, he was saving his family, yet every night when he heard the call to prayer, shame burned inside him. That night Yusuf had been told to be a leaf sign near the old very well beyond the western rise. He waited until the guard changed position. He carried the empty bucket away from the horses and it's gone for more water. No one stopped him. Why would they? He was only Yusuf, the quiet boy who cleaned sandal and slept near the animal's rope. He moved past the last fire and into the dark. His mouth was dry. Every sound seems too loud to all close somewhere, and the almost dropped the bucket. He reached the dry well and pulled the strip of cloth from under the untin. His finger trembled before they could place it under the stone. A voice behind him asked why a man needed water from a dead wall. Yusuf frozen slowly. He turned. Fatma Horn stood a few steps away with a small lamp in her hand. She has followed because she has seen his fear easier near the horses' line. She did knows what he carried, but fear has a smell, and he had learned to notice it. Yusuf tried to speak, but no word came. Fatma raised the lamp. The light fell on his hand and the cloth, three black dots. Her face changed. Yusuf fell to his knees. He begged her not to call the guards. He said his mother would die, his brother would die, and he had no choice. Fatma's hand tightening around the lamp. Anger rose in the first because of men like him. Warriors could be killed in their sleep because one of message. A whole plan could fail, but then she saw his face clearly. He was hardly older than a boy. His fear was not for gold, it was for family. That did not make betrayal right, but it made the knife harder to lift. Fatma told him to stand. He shook his head and wept. She said if he stayed on his knees, he would remain a slave to fear. If he stood, he might still become a man. Yusuf stood slowly. Fatma ordered him to give her the cloth he did. She asked who had given him the task. Yusuf said he did not know the man's real name, but he had a scar near his left eye and spoke Turkish with a strange accent. Fatma understood enough. She had heard of such men moving between camps. She stood Yusuf that from this moment he would not do exactly as she said. If the lies again, she would hand him to Orhan herself. If he told the truth, there might still be a road to save his family and his honor. Instead of taking Yusuf straight or Orhan, Fatma brought him first to Nilufar. Some would call this a mistake, but Fatma knew that Nilufar could see the whole shape of a problem. Inside Nilufar tent, the lamp burned low. Yusuf stood with his head bowed while Fatma explained. Nilufar listened without interruptions. When Yusuf spoke of his mother's bracelet, Nilufar's eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. She asked if he had ever seen his family after the first meeting. Yusuf said no, only the bracelet. Nilufar said the enemy might not even have them. Hector might have bought the bracelet, stolen it to take it from that place. Fear had filled the empty space with belief. Yusuf looked at the ground has opened under him. He idea that he has betrayed people for a lie was worse than the fear itself. Nilufar told him that trust would be found, but first the would use the enemy rope to pull the enemy closer. She sent for Orhan quietly. When Orhan entered and saw Yusuf, Fatma, Nilufar, and the cloth, he understood that the night has changed. Yusuf confessed everything. He did not hide the smile. Shame. He told Orhan about the messages, the dry well, the scared man, and the promise about his family. Orhan listened with a face like a stone. Yusuf expected that perhaps he wanted it that would be easier than waiting for judgment. But Orhan did not draw his sword. He asked Yusuf one question: if his mother stood before him now and knew what he had done, would she bless him or lower his eyes? Yusuf broke completely. He said she would lower his eyes. Orhan nodded, and she had passed the punishment already burning in him. The rest would depend on whether he had repaired what he had broken. Orhan made a new plan. Yusuf would leave the sign, not the sign Hector expected. The three-dot cloth would be placed under the stone with a small cut on the edge. That cut would mean the false supply movement was confirmed. If Hector believed it, he vowed should man toward the southern wagons where Orhan trap waited. At the same time, Fatma would identify the scared messages. If the came near the well, Yusuf would remain under hidden guards. No one else in camp would know, because news of our traitors could spread panic. Yusuf would leave for now, not because his crime was small, but because his trust and become useful. Before Yusuf was taken away, Orhan told him that saving family by destroying brother is not civilization, it is another kind of death. But if correct he is wrong, he must walk through it fully. Yusuf nodded, tears were still on his face. To silence up, let him out. Fatma watched him go. She felt no peace. Mercy was never simple. It did not erase danger. It only gave a sinner one narrow bridge back from darkness. By midnight, the trap was set. The camp seemed normal from away. Fireworks guard walk. A few men sang softly near the fort tent to take. The night appears calm, but under that calm, Orhan choosens up, move like shadow. Near the southern supply wagons, empty snacks were piled high to look full. Behind low screen of brush, no armor shone. No homers, never. Even the animal had been moved away. Near the dry well, Fatma waited with two women dressed as servant and four hidden arms laying flat beyond the stone she had insisted on being there. Orhan had not liked it, but the news, her courage and her reason. She had been Yusuf, she might know the messengers when others did not. The night stretch waiting can be heard, then fighting in battles. The body had work in waiting, the mind creates 100 fear. Fatma watched her dark until her eyes hurt. She thought of Lavius. Though she tried not to, she wondered where he was inside Bursa. Did he know about Hector? Did he order this? Did he care who suffered as long as Orhan was hurt? Then she became angry with herself. Why should she research for goodness in an enemy commander's while her own people stood in danger? Yet memory does not obey command, it returns even when he hurt. Shut the door. A soft sound came near the well. One of the hidden arms shifted his hand toward his knife. Fatma held up one finger, telling him to wait. A finger came through the dark, bent low, moving with care. He wore a rough cloak. When he reached the stone, he touched it once, twisted and lifted it. Fatma saw the side of his face and the turn toward the map glow in the distance. A scare near the left eye, she knew his was the man Yusuf has described. The messengers took two cloth from the cut on his edge and smiled. He placed something else under the stone, the began the leaf. The Arabs wanted to seize him, but Fatma remembered Orhan ordered follow, not attack. The man moved west first, then south, avoiding open ground. Two Arabs followed from behind. Fatma followed father's back with one woman. The messengers did not go toward Bursa. He went toward on an old shepherd, but near the dry river there three more men waited with horses. One carried a small horn, another had a cross-shaped marked one into the leather of his belt. These were not simple Byzantine soldiers. They were part of the deeper game. The scared man told them the southern supplies would move before dawn. He said the Turks were blind and their young spy was useful. One of the waiting men laughed. Fatma jaw tightening. She thought of Yusuf, tears and image these men laughing while holding his spear like a leash. The leader ordered two riders to take the news to Hector and the rest to prepare fire jars. So the plan was not only to steal supplies, they meant to burn the wagons and create chaos in the camp. If the fire spread, horses could break loose, stand could burn, and warriors might rush blindly to save families. In that confusion, the enemy could strike elsewhere. Fatma sent the men back with the news. The women moved quickly and silently through the dark. Fatma stayed to watch. The scared man suddenly turned his head. If he had heard something, Fatma pressed himself behind a broken well. Her breath stopped. The man stared into the dark for a long moment. Then one of the horses stones and the turns away. Fatma slowly released her breath. She had stood near death before, but each time in a had new state taste. The messages reached Orhan before the enemy moved. He justice the trap. If while jars were coming, the wagon must not simply hide warrior. They must be ready to swallow fire without spreading it. Wet hides were brought quietly and laid under the sacks. Water barrels were opened. Men covered the ground. The damp earth archers moved to higher ground. Orhan also sent a small force toward the western side because choice in the south was likely meant to pull attention for another move. This was the difference between a warrior and a bay. A warrior sees the blade coming at his chest. Abe asks who benefit if he looks only at this blade. Near down, the first enemy group approached the southern wagons. The sky was still dark blue and the camp looked half asleep. The attackers carried cloths carrying clay jars filled with oil and burning clothes. Their plan was simple: throw, burn, run, and fell. Let panic do the rest. The scared messenger raised his hand. The first jar flew through the air and broke against a wagon. Fire jumped up with a hungry sound. Another jar followed. Flames rose higher. For one breath, the enemy believed they had won. Then the wet hides sometimes the fire, the sack would fall away, and Turkish warrior rose far behind the wagon like the earth itself had opened. Arrows flew before the attackers could shout. Two fell at once. Others turned to run, but more arms blocked the path behind them. Orhan rode in from the side with his sword drawn. He did not shout wildly. His command was clear: take them alive. If possible, dead. Men answered no questions. The fight was short, but one attacker tried to light another jar and throw it toward the tent, but Norab struck in the jar from his hand and knocked him down with his flat of his sword. Another ran toward the darkness and almost escaped, but Turkish horses cut across the path. The man stopped so quickly he fell backward within moment. The attackers were born. The scared message was not among them. He has stayed behind, clever enough to spend other first. Orhan expected that. He looked toward the west where the second part of the night was unfolding. At the old shepherd, but Fatma saw the scared man receive a rider from Bursa. The rider spoke quickly, then pointed toward the western ground. Fatma could not hear every word, but she heard enough. Channel open before sunrise. The real move was beginning. The first attack had been only smoke. She signaled the hidden Arabs. This time they did not only slow, they moved to cut off the messenger's retreat. Fatma stepped from the shadow and called him by the name Yusuf had used. The man turned surprised. Then he smiled at his seam as women alone did not worry him. That smile vanished when the Arabs appeared behind him. He drew a curved knife and grabbed Fatma, pulling her in front of him. The Arab froze. The knife touched her throat. He told them to drop their weapons. Fatma did not struggle. She looked calm, but her heart beat hard. The man began to back toward his horse. He had Turkish mercury was famous, so they should prove it, letting him leave. Fatma answered that was those who had still had a woman heart. His eyes narrowed. He pressed the knife closer before the claws moved again. An arrow struck his hand. The knife fell. Fatma twisted away and dropped her elbow into his chest. The Arab rushed forward and seized him from the dark behind them. Flavius lowered his bow. For a moment, for no one moved. Fatma started at him. The Arabs raised their weapons. Flavius was dressed in dark riding cloth, not commander's armor. His face was tanned and looked too surprised by his own reactions as everyone else. Fatma asked why he was there. Flavius said nothing at first. Then he said the scared man served Hector and Hector served only ruin. If the channel was open, men would die on both sides. We did not need to die. Fatma laughed bitterly and asked when he had become a lover of spices. Flavius looked away. He said he was not there for pieces. He was there because Hector had begun a game that would burn Bursa from inside. The wanted to bind Flavius too, but Fatma stopped them. She did not free him. She only stopped them from acting too quickly. She asked what Hector. When Flavius said the old water channel had been cleared from the city side, Hector intended to move a small group through it, not to attack Orhan directly but to strike Osman Bey, and if Osman died by hidden hand, the Turkish camp might fall into grip and range. Orhan might attack before he was ready. Bursa would gain time, and Hector would sell his success to whoever paid most. Fatma force went schooled. Whatever confusion she carried about Flavius vanished under the weight of that news. She sent one up raising to Orhan. Then she turned back to Flavius and asked why he warned them. He met her eyes and said he had many signs, but he would not let a haired snake choose the honor of war. Fatma said there was no honor in killing their people year after years. Flavius accepted the blow without reply, perhaps because it was true, perhaps because he had no answer that no survived the morning light. The warning reached Orhan as was questioning the captured attackers when he had heard Osman tent was the target. His face changed for his first time that night, not with fear but with something sharper. The orders, the prisoners' scarce and rude hard toward the center of camp. Target and Connaughts followed at the same time. Boran led men toward the old channel entrance. Nilufar was woken and told to move the women and healers away from the central path without causing panic. Molhan refused to leave Osman tent until she understood the danger. When she was told, she took a danger and sat beside Osman with the calm of a mountain. Osman, thought weak, asked for his sword. The old water channel opened under a patch of broken stone behind the western ditch. Boran reached it just as the first enemy emerged. The man had must on his arm, had a short blade between his tent. He saw Boran and frozen. Boran struck him with his hilt of his sword. Before the could call out more, men pushed from behind, trapped into narrow open. The trucks pulled them out one by one, but then a second opening was found closer to the camp, hidden under brush. Hector had prepared more than one mouth. Three enemy killers piled through at the second opening and moved toward Osman tent. The wore dark cloth and carried this blade. They did not run. Running make sound. They move like men trained to kill sleeping target. The first guard never saw them. A knife flashed, but before it is landed, Scanlan, the young woman from the healing tent, carried out. She had been carrying water and saw the shadow move for her shout saved the guard life. The killer rushed forward now, speech replacing silence. Molhan stepped out from the tent with the danger. She was not young and she was not armored, but she was Molhan Horn. The first killer hesitated because she saw only a woman. That hesitation caused him. She cursed him arm and moved aside as the guard struck him down. The second killer pushed past, trying to enter the tent. Osman rose inside, sword in hand, his body shaking but his height burning. The killer entered and stopped at the head, walked into his own death. Osman's sword moved once the man fell. The third killer turned to flee, but Orhan arrived looked like a storm. His horse struck the ground hard and the leaped down before it fully stopped. The killer raised the blade. Orhan disarmed him and with one bow and threw him into ground. He wanted answer, he wanted Hector, he wanted every root of poison. Pulled from the earth, the killer laughed through broken teeth and said the roots were deeper than Orhan knew. Then he bit something hidden in his mouth. Poisons his body shook and went still. Orhan stood over him, breathing hard around him. The camp began to wake. Fully men ran with weapons, women gathered children. The false camp of night had ended. Osman stepped out of the tent, spotted by Malhan, but still holding his sword. When the tribe saw him alive, a wave of relief passed through them. Some carried out thanks to Allah, others struck their shields in anger. Orhan turned on his father. For a moment he was not the commander of a sign. He was a son who almost lost his father in the dark. Osman looked at the dead killer. That Orhan, he said, that enemy has shown it where a brave enemy had shown attack the line. A desperate enemy crawls toward his sick bed of a old man. The words spread, moving those nearby. They change fear into anger and anger into strength. Orhan understood the power of that movement. He raised his voice of the suffering gathering, wearing could not clear him. He said the night had revealed the enemy path, but it had also revealed the camp soul. A young man cry had gave a guard. I wandered here, the found a spy, a shiner. He confessed mother had stoned with danger, old warriors and still the bands. This was Bursa would fall, not because the Turks had more sword, but because their roots were alive. As the sun began to rise, the sky turned pale gold over the plain. Bursa Wall caught the first light from the city. Horses sounded. They did not yet know the night attack had failed on. Perhaps they knew and were trying to hide fear and noise. Orhan looked toward the falls, then toward the captured channel. The hidden road was now his. The enemy had used it, sent death. He would use it to send trust. Flavius was brought to the edge of the camp under guard. Fatma walked outside him, not close but not fear. For Orhan came to meet them. The arms around him watched Flavius with open hatred. Orhan had reason to kill him or chain him. Instead, he asked why he spoke. He should believe a man who had fought them for so long. Flavius entered then that he should believe him. He should believe the warning that has already proved true. Orhan studies him. This was a dangerous answer because it was honest. Fatma told Orhan Flavius had shot the messenger's hand and served their life. She said that without softness, fact did not need softness. Orhan asked Flavius what he wanted. Flavius looked toward Bursa for the first time. He seemed less like a proud commander and more like a man trapped between fire. He said Hector had men inside the city and some of them were close to the consuls. If Hector gained control, he would turn the sign into a slaughter and escape with gold. While both sides burned their head. Flavius wanted Hector removed. Orhan said that sound like Bursa problem. Flavius replied that by Sunrise tomorrow it would be everyone's problem. Orhan stepped closer. He said Flavius had taken Turkish life. Flavius said Orhan had taken Byzantine. Leaves the up shifted angrily, but Orhan raised his hand. Flavius continued, saying that was had made them enemies. But Hector was not an enemy in the same way. Hector had not city, not tribe, not grave of father, not prayer for children. He would sell Bursa toward and the Turkish camp tomorrow, such as a man could not be allowed to choose in the next battle. Orhan looked at Fatma. Her face gave little away, but he saw the tension in the eyes. His had ordered Flavius held under guard, not a guest and not a promisers throw in chain. He would be questioned. If he lied, he would die. He would trust. They would decide what trust was worth. Flavius expected this guard. He led him away. He turned once toward Fatma. She did not lower his eyes, but she did not speak. Inside Bursa, Hector received news of failures with surprising calm. He sat in a small room under a merchant house, entering, eating figs of silver plate. The secrets scared messengers had not returned. The first attack had failed. The channel killers were dead. Captured the lessons man would have caused. Hector only smiled. One of men asked what they would not do not know. Hector said they would do what all wise men would when a plan fails. They would sell the failure as some else betrayal. He took out a sealed letter already prepared. It accused Flavius of secret contact with Flavius of secret contact. Orhan, it claimed Flavius had allowed Turkish scouts near the channel and planned to trade Bursa for personal power under Orhan rule. The accusation was false in shape but close enough to that his shadow to be believed. Flavius had left the head city secretly. He had not told the consuls he had been seen near the western ground. People believed the lie more easily when the lie stands near fact. Hector ordered the letter delivered to the right hand before noon. Then he looked at a second map. That one did not show the Turkish camp. It showed Bursa inner street, wells, grain stores and crutches. If the city could not be held by loyalty, if it could be held by fear, it would be not enough hunger. If hunger was not enough fire, Hector had not come to save Bursa. He had come to last door before it opened. By morning, the Turkish camp was fully awake. The captured men were questioned separately. Some knew little. They had been paid. Others carried marked connection them to hidden group moving toward between Byzantine lands and the coast. The channel was scared and secured. Yusuf was kept under guard, but Orhan ordered that he be fed and not beaten. This angered some Arabs. They wanted quick punishment. Orhan heard them and said, justice done is anger can become another crime. Yusuf would answer from what he had alone done, but first he would help find the prisoners used to control him. If his family lived, they would be safe if it possible. If they were dead, the could be exposed, entered where trust would come. Before the sword, this decision spread quietly. Some men respected it, some others did not understand. Leadership is often lonely because every choice wounds someone. Idea of fairness. Orhan knew that Bursa. He also knew that a state could not be built only on revenge. Revenge burns bright and died. Justice built a road. His father had quite hinted this, and his tide had tested where the cold life, but it Nilufar visited the wounded. After the attacks, Galen, the young woman who had shouted, sat near the healing tent, blood on the sleeve that was on. She looked frightening by the tension. Nilufar sat beside her, told them that many warriors would live because she had used his voice. Cal said she had only screamed. Nilufar had sometime a scream is stronger than a sword if it is come at the right moment. The girls smiled through tears around them. Women moved with new purpose. They had been afraid in the night, but now they had been seen and that they were not helpless. The camp was not protected by warrior alone. Every eyes, every hand, every honest heart had a duty. Orhan later stood before the main banners. The tribe gathered in a wide circle. Osman sat on a raised seat, pale but present. Molan stood at the side, target broken. Boran nods. Nilufar and Fatma took their places. The captured weapons from the night attack were laid on the ground for all to see. Orhan did not hide the danger. They told the people that the enemy he tried to enter like a snake, but Allah had allowed them to see the snake before it bite reaches the heart. He did not name Yusuf but did not feed the camp traitors to satisfy anger. Instead, he spoke watchfulness and unity, and the day ahead he had Bursa. He could not fall to try hand to divided hers. It would fall when every person in the camp understood why they stood there. Were not there for stone, gold, or pride. They were to open a road to justice, satisfy trade, prayer, and a future where their children did not lie forever. Between burning village and closed gate, he said the enemy wanted them to become cruel because cruel would make them easier to hate and easier to defeat. They would be heard in battle. They would not become empty in the soul. They would punish betrayal, but they would not close justice. They would fight Bursa rulers, but they would not make aura innocent people. The sword moved through the crowd. Men who had been angry became steady. Women who had been afraid lifted their head. Osman watches his son and saw the something that changed. Honor was no longer only carrying order, he was shaped hearted. That was the work of a ruler. When the gather ended, Osman called Orhan close. He spoke softly, so only a few cold hair. He said the night had been a blade. Orhan he held without cutting his own hand. Orhan answered that his blade was still sharp. Osman nodded. He looked toward Bursa and said the sharpest part was yet to come. In the afternoon, a white flag appeared on Bursa walls. Our messengers came out under guard. A letter scaled by a member of the city council. The letter accuses Flavius of betrayal and demanded his return for judgment. It also offered a temporary exchange of prisons if Orhan would stop movement near the western channel. Orhan read the letter twice. Then he handed it to Orhan. The timing was too clean. Hector was moving quickly. Furious and show the letter. Laugh without joy, he said. Hector had begun. Fatma watched him carefully. She asked if the consuls would believe it. Flavius said, hungry people believe what give shape to their fear. If Bursa feared betrayal, they would look for a betrayal Hector and give them one. Orhan asked who inside the council hated Flavius enough to support the accusation. Flavius named two merchants, one priest and a commanders who had lost men under his orders. Then the name a man called Lady Helena, who controlled grain stores through the family. She did not love Hector, but she loved survive. If Hector promised to protect her stores, he might spot any lies. Orhan saw a chance if Bursa leaders were turning to each other. The city was had cracked without a stone falling, but cracks can close if struck badly. He needed to widen it with care. He ordered a reply. Flavius would not be returned until the trust to the night attack was judged. Prisoner exchange could be discussed but not under threat as the western channel. The trust would secure any road used to attack their camp. The reply was firm but not blind. It gave Bursa honest people something to think about. It also told Hector that Orhan was not dancing to the tune. That evening at the sun lowered again, Fatma found Flavius under dead guard near a small fire. He had were not tried, but four ups stood close enough to and from him to needed. She brought him water. The guard watched him silence. Flavius expected in the said he did not expect kindness. Fatma said water was not kindness, it was water. He almost smiled. Then he said he was changed. Silence the last time the face each other. She answered that wonders change people. He looked at the cup. She said some bonds reveal what was right already there. Fatma did not want soft words from him. She asked how many times she had looked any while Hector men innocent people. Flavius did not answer quickly. He said power inside Bursa was not simple. Every commander through he used Hector and every merchant through the control him with corn, but men like Hector grow in the spaces proud people refuses to see. Fatma said that sounded like an excuses. Fatma nodded and said perhaps it was. He had many excuses if she wanted them. His father, his city, his duty, his dead soldiers. But excuses did not wash blood from her. The dishonesty unsettled her more than pride would have. She told that saying her once at warning them once she did not make them clean. He said the knew she'd ask what the wanted from her. Then he looked at fully. He said nothing. That was the first answer. That did not feel like a trap. Fatma left without trap without an other world but her thought. He did not live with her. Night came again, but it was through the same night. The camp was more awake now, not with panic but with purpose. The channel was guarded. The southern wagon there were repaired. South watches the road instead. The main tent. Orhan prepared a new move. Not a full attack, not yet full. First he would send word into Bursa, not to the ruler but to the people who were tired of factor fear. He would promise safety to families who opened their door when their time came. The world promised fair treatment to craftsmen, traders, and farmers. He would make clear that the fight was against those who used the city as a shield for their own power. A city falls faster when its people stop believe that surrender means death. Orhan said getting such letter inside would be difficult. Orhan looked toward the secure channel and said the enemy had given them a road. Turgid smiled. The old wolf like him. The same path meant for assails would not carry world. World could be sharper than blade when placed in the right hand. Before dawn, selected men entered the channel with sealed messages wrapped in oilskin. Yusuf under guard showed them the marks used by Hector messengers. This did not free him from guilt, but it gave him away. Fight the lie that had unsealed him. Orhan watched him closely. Yusuf's face was pale, but his head no longer shook. Shame had not left him, but shame has changed direction. It was no longer pulling him, only it was pushing him toward repair. It was man disappeared into the channel. Orhan looked inside the opening. The truss smelled wet and all this narrow darkness connected to camp and city. Enemy was help and chance he threw off both. Strange history could be hidden. Tunnel from the road by which Bursa first heard a different future. The section closed with Orhan looking at the walls. At the first light touched them. Behind those walls, Hector prepared light, the councils prepared judgment, the people prepare for hunger. Fravia waits between two words. Fatma carries a question she does not want. Nilofer stayed the heart of the camp. Osman watched his son become the man who stood need and understand that Bursa will not be won that attack. It will be won by hearted, patient and storm that begin quietly before it break the sky. The next day will not bring peace, it will bring a deeper game. Hector will from Bursa, the councils will against Flavius. The Turkish letter will move through secret hands. Some people in the city will hide them, some will burn them, some will read them and feel hope from the first time in many years. And for beyond the walls, new rides will come. The started moving toward the frontier. Orhan wanted one battle, but he is about to face three. The battle of Bursa, the battle against betrayal, and the battle inside his own heart. And he learned that a ruler cannot save everyone, but must still answer for every life placed under this banner. The hidden road of Bursa, the morning after the failed night attack, did not feel like a normal morning. The sun rose over the camp, but its light did not bring space. It showed broken arrows, burning wood, black mark on the ground. He entered faces that has not slept. The Turkish camp was alive, but is not camp. Men walked alive with the hand near their sword. Women spoke in lower voice. Children were kept close. The tent where the horses seemed to feel that danger had passed near them in the dark. That attack had failed. Osman Bey was alive, and the weakness had been stopped, but everyone understood that the enemy has entered too close. A wall of guard has to broken by a narrow road under the head. It was written on existence, perhaps there were more. Traitors had carried messengers, perhaps another pair of eyes were still watching from inside the camp. Orhan Bey knew his fear could become more dangerous than the enemy itself. A frightening camp could first badly. A suspicion came from itself apart. She did not let the people sit too long with whispers before the sun climbed high. He was through he tent without a large guard around him. He greeted the wounded. He stood near the blackened wagon and asked the men repairing them if they had enough food. He thanked the woman who had carried water during the night. He spoke to the young guard near Osman tent and told them they stood well. His face was seriously, but no danger is real. But the most also show that the fear is not the runner of the camp. The below watches him, and she passed the was that he was not blind, hiding inside the council's tent. That was not shouting at everyone like a man who had lost control. They saw that the look tried but steady. These give the strength. Something a leader gives order with sword. Sometimes he gives order only by walking him straight back when order want to bend. That morning Orhan silenced at the camp that the state had not been shaken. Near the center of the camp, Osman Bey sat outside his tent from a short time. Orhan did not like it because the good morning wind could make his pain rose, but Osman wanted the people to see him. He was trapped in a thick log and his sword rested across the knees. His face was pale, yet his eyes were bright. Many people came near only to look at him. Some bowed their head, some whispered prayers, some also warriors smiled with tear in his eyes. The enemy had tried to kill the father to their accusers in his bed, but there he sat under the open sky, still holding a sword. That sign will sword more than a under 100 speeches. Osman did not speak loudly. He did not need to. When a young ox came close and kissed his hand, Osman told his guard, a tent guard more than cloth. He guard memory, honor, and tomorrow. The young ox nodded. If he had been given our tears. Osman then looked toward Bursa. The city walls too stood in the distance, proud and silent. He knew that behind those stones fear he was moving. Then man was sent messages has failed. Failures make school was more dangerous. Osman has seen the many times a brave enemy attack again. A cowardly enemy look for poisons inside Bursa. Poisons has already begun to prepare. Hector later had entered had seen two consuls before noon. It moved first through a merchant, then a peasant, then a nervous commander who had never liked previous, but the time that later reached the consul's hills, it was has already grown larger. His people mouth some said Flavius and spoken with Orhan for month. Orhan said has promised to open Bursa gate. Someone even whispered that the open Bursa gate had Turkish gold, not proof was shown. But the fear do not always ask for proof. Fear asks from the name Hector gave Bursa a name to hate. The councils gather in the cold stone hall in the bells, the city range outside. Lady Helena arrived with two servants beside her. The evil she was not young, but she carried himself like a queen of green silver. The family owned storehouses, mills, and grassed its peaceful days. The man dangerous because she gave brave the crushes in heart says the man called her powerful because she could decide who ate first. She listened at the letter was read. The force did not move, but the fighters tightening around the edge of the chair. The letter accuses Flavius of secret talk with Orhan Bey if said had left the city at night without the consul's permission. It said the channel attack failed because Flavius warned the Turks. It said the Turkish camp now held him safely, which proved that was not a prisoner but a protector. Allegedly, some council members shook anger looked like a feared one or persist again how a commander of Bursa could not such a thing. A younger officer said he had never trusted Flavius because pride often hid ambitions. Another man asked whether Flavius he stood, whether he had been captured. No one knew, but everyone spoke as speaking could create trust. Hector stood near the back, the false, quiet and respectful. He had dressed like a simple advisor, no like the man who had built the trap. He said very title. This was wise allies battles when other people water if the defended the latter too strongly. Some might suspect him, so he only said that the consuls must protect the city. He said they should not let all loyalty blind them. He said Bursa could survive hunger, but it could not survive betrayal from within. These words were soft, but they struck the right places. Soon survived member called for Flavius to be declared a traitor until to return and prove himself innocent. Lady Helena finally spoke. Her voice was smooth and cold. She said the city should not waste time with emotion. If Flavius has betrayed Bursa, he must die. If he had been taken, he must be used. Either way, the Turks must not be allowed to turn him to a weapon. She suggested sending another letter to Orhan. If in public, the letter would demand Flavius return in secret, and other messages would go to the Turkish camp with offer grain, prisoners, and safe passengers from same merchant in exchange from Flavius. It Orhan refuses. The council would accuse that Flavius had been chosen the Turks. Then the people anger would turn away from the consuls and forward him. Hector liked her mind. He did not trust like, but he liked how he understood power. He was not controlled by anger. She used anger like a tool that made her useful and dangerous. He allowed his head slightly and agreed that the city needed clear action. The councils approved the plan. Outside the hall, the city waited for Orhan. Hungry people stood in narrow street and watched. Every messenger's mother held bracelet basket with title food inside. All men sat near doorway and connected. The sound of soldiers' step. Bursa had not fallen, but it was bending. At the Turkish camp, the hidden channel became the center of the Orhan attention. Men and entered it before dawn with messages from the people of Bursa. They had not yet returned. The channel was narrow, wet and broken in survivor places. Some parts smelled of old water and rot. Other parts were dry and full of dust. A man could move through it by behind his back and scraping his shoulders against stone. It was not a road for any army, it was a road for secret. Boran Bey had gone close to the entrance and studied it with the eyes of man who knew danger. He did not like sending men into the earth. Above ground, a warrior can see the sky, measure distance, and choose where to strike. Underground, the dark itself became an enemy. A single loose stone can block the way. A single hidden knife can kill before and shout it here. Still, the road was too important to ignore. If Hector had used it with sand killer, Orhan could use it sand hope. The first man turned near Mitty that may out cover in mud and breathing hard. One hand cut his check from falling stone, another carrying no sword because he had lost it is narrow crack and could not truck back to take it. But their mission had success. They had left scared messages in three places: inside Bursa near a break oven, inside old water house, and beneath a low stone near a small chapel where poor family came from bread. The messengers were not written from Lord, they were written for people, families. Weapons did not raise, weapon could be protected. Craftsmen would keep their shop, farmers would keep their field. Priests and crushes would not be harmed if they did not have soldiers fight. The war was against those who used Bursa as a shield for power, not against the innocent people trapped inside its wall. The return man also brought news. The city was hungry but not starving. Some grain was being hidden, but rich family soldiers were angry because food was divided unfairly. Some people blamed the Turks, others blamed the councils. Many had Flavius had betrayed them. The rumors had spread faster than fire. This told Orhan that Hector was moving quickly. He looked at Bursa and said the enemy had already begun to change the story. Boran answered that they must send a strong trust. Orhan did not answer at once. He walked away from channel and look toward Bursa. Trust is not always believed simply because it is true. Lies often wear beautiful clothes. Trust sometimes arrives covered in mud, late and without proof. If Orhan wanted two people of Bursa to believe him, he needed more than letters. He needed a sign, something small but clear, something that showed that Turks could have used cruelty but chose justice. That sign came sooner than expected. Near afternoon, a patrol brought in three people found hiding near the library: an old Byzantine man, a woman, and a little boy. They were not soldiers, their clothes were torn and their faces showed hunger. The woman held the boy so tightly that the could hardly breathe. The old man kept repeating in one broken Turkish that they were not Pisces. Some Arabs did not believe him. They said no one came from Bursa by accident, but the man fell to her knees and begged for water from the child. The boy's lips were cracked. Orhan ordered water brought at once. The boy drank too fast and began to cough. Nilufar Horn came forward and helped him drink slowly. She checked his forehead and said the fever. The old man watched with fear and confusion. He had expected rough hand, perhaps change, perhaps death. Instead, a Turkish woman was cooling his grandson's face with wet cloth. Orhan asked why they left the city. The old man said their family had been accused of hiding grain. Soldiers took what little they had. The boy's mother feared he would die if he stayed. They had found a broken drain path and crawled out during the night, but the lost their way. They were not looking for the Turkish camp, they were looking for open land and mercy. Some warriors argued that they should be held until the war ended. The Turkish are listening. They were holding a sick child would win no battle worth winning. Orhan agreed. He ordered that his child be returned, the woman be fed, and the old man be questioned gently, not like a spy, but not like a frightening grandfather. Then he made a decision. When the boy became strong enough to travel, they would be sent to safe village behind Turkish lines with a written promises then had been protected. And this story would reach Bursa one way or another if the people inside the city heard that a poor family had crossed into Turkish camp and live. Hector light would become harder to hold. Nilüfer look at Orhan and understand his purpose, but she also knew his mercury was not only a plan. Orhan had always been careful in war, but he was not cruel by nature. He could strike hard when needed, yet the suffering of children touched him deeply. She remembered the early day when she was younger and she learned to hide pain from the face. Now he had it better, but he could still see it. Leadership had not made him cold. He had only taught him when to show warmth and when to bury it. Fatma Horn sent the afternoon way from the crowded center of camp. She had not slept since the night before, but rest could not come. Her mind returned again and again to the moment when Flavius' arrow struck the scared messengers, hanged. If the hand been one breath late, the knife might have cut the throat. Why had we saved her? His answer was simple. He had not want Hector to control the wound, but Fatma's new man could have more that no reasons. The trouble was that she did not want to think about any second reasons. She walked near the edge of the camp where the ground sloped toward the plain. The wind moved the hair under his head, covering. She remembered the first time she had seen Flavius as more as a distant enemy. He had been here proud and full of anger. He still was. But there had been moments when something human broke through his mirror armor that troubled her because it made her less clean. In stories stood around Ford's enemies often look like a darkness and he, but in real life the light and darkness move inside people in ways that are harder to separate. Fatma did not want this lesson. She wanted simple answers. The world kept refusing to give them. Found her there. He did not speak at first. He stood beside her and looked at Bursa. After a while, he said the camp was talking about Flavius. Some believe he had truly turned against Hector. Others thought it was a trick. Fatma said both could be true. A man could turn against one snake while still begin a wolf. Akbar smiled slightly at the sharper of her words, but his eyes were serious. He asked what she believed. Fatma answers that she believed Flavius had saved her life. She also believed he had taken lives from their people. One, one truth did not resist the others. Noted he did not come to judge her, though he had come because he knew the carried she too much alone. He told her that Orhan would question Flavius again before sunset. Fatma asked why he was telling her, accusers had said, because Flavia speaks differently when she is near. That made Fatma turn sharply. Accusers raised his hand as he calmed her anger. He said he did not mean insult. He meant that some door open only when the right person stand before them. If they needed the trust about Hector, perhaps Fatma could help pull it out. Fatma did not like being used as a key, but she also knew that if Hector was not stopped, more people would die. She agreed to attend the questioning, but only as a witness, not as a soft voice. Actor accepted this before leaving. The told her that Mercury and questions could stand in the same heart. She did not answer, but the sword stayed with her. Flavius was thrown to Orhan conscious and her son said his hands were tied this time, not tightly but enough to remind everyone that he was not free. Target stood near the entrance. Boran sat on one side, his face untraceable on her lead against a tent pole, watching like a hawk. Fatma stood behind Orhan a little to the side. Nilufar was also there because she understood people as well as plan. Orhan wanted more than military answers. He wanted to understand the crack inside Bursa. Orhan began without greeting. He asked Flavius to name every man connected to Hector inside the city. Flavius looked around the tent and said name where easy proof was hard. If Orhan acted or name alone, innocent people might die and guilty people would hide behind them. Orhan said he had not asked for a reason lesson in justice for commanders who had defended Bursa. Ruled game. Flavius expected the strike with a small nod. Then he began to speak. He named Hector knows messengers, save houses, and paid guards. He described a wine cellar, not the Eastern market, who carried letter inside empty barrels. He spoke of a monk. He was not truly a monk, a man who used the chapel storehouse to pass information. He mentions Lear Helena stepward who gained the sword secret by night. He explained that Hector had created their three circles. The outer circle carried messengers and did not know how much. The middle circle arranged supplies, false paper, and secret passengers. The inner circles knew his true plan, but Flavius believed not only for five people belongs to it. Boran asked if Flavius was one of them. The tent became still. Flavius looked at Boran and said no. Then he added, then he said, used Hector before and allow Hector near the consuls, which might be almost as bad. Turgid grunted. He respected honest guilt more than clean lines, but respect did not mean trust. Orhan asked why Flavius and not remove Hector. Easier. Flavius' jaw tightening. He said Bursa leader wanted results. Hector through food, through secrets, wrote information from Turkish movement and promises from distance. Allies. Every man is power like a dirty hand when it brings clean profit. Then they hand when he had become visible. Fatma asked. It has about Yusuf family. Flavius looked at the forward. He did not know the young Alps who had been forced to carry messages because Hector came to hold his mother and brother. Flavius said Hector Sometime the flaviers was real, sometime they were not, sometime he kept only one family member alive only long enough to control another. Fatma face haunted. Nilufar asked where such prisoners could be kept. Flavius gave three possible places: an old granary outside the lower quarter, a storage called under Lady Helena grain house, and a farm near the Hortrons Road, granted by men without banners at the mention of the northern road. Target looked at Orhan. Their scout had already seen movement there. The Pisces began to join. Orhan ordered a small rescue party prepared for the farm, but not before dark. It Flavius family there was they do not throw it. It was a trap. The party would discover it quietly. Yusuf would not be told until the trust has no hope can kill a man if the given too early and then taken away. The questioning continued. Flavius described the mood inside Bursa. The council were divided. Soldiers were angry but still loyal to their pay. Merchant was a deal, but they feared losing their wealth. Peasants feared blood in the city. Poor families wanted only bread and safety. If Orhan could separate the people from Hector, fear Bursa would fear the inside, but it Hector created a great panic. The people might turn to harshness leader for protection. That was Hector's talent. He made danger, then offered himself as he answered. Orhan asked what Hector would not neck Flavius through for a moment. Then he said Hector could not ride the same road again. He would attack truck. He had already accused Flavius. Next he would like send false message if Orhan name messages that proves so safety to some and that to other. He might try to make Christians believe the Turks planned revenge. He might try to make Turks believe the people of Bursa were preparing poison on trap. If both sides feared mercury, then only blood would remain. Orhan listens carefully. This was exactly the kind of war he hated most. A battlefield was honest compared to this. When the questioning entered, Orhan and ordered Flavius kept under guard but given food, nor objected. He said many Turkish prisoners had not been treated so well in Byzantine hands. Orhan answered that they were not taking lessons from the enemy security, they were building their own law honors. Lowered his eyes, not fully convinced but obedient. Flavius looked at Orhan with something like surprises. Orhan noticed and said kindness was not friendship. Flavius answered that he understood, but perhaps he did not fully understand because he had lived too long among people who called every mercury weakness. That night the rescue party left the camp. Turgut let it himself through. Some said he should rest because of his age. He laughed at that and asked at walls. Began asking sheep for permission to hunt with him. Went two expert scouts and 6 silence up. They looked no banners. Their horses were wrapped at the hooves to often sound the men which helped them. They moved north through low ground and dry grass, avoiding the road where eyes might wait. Yusuf sat alone under guard in a small tent when the party left. He did not know why Target had hidden road. He had told and the knew, and now he waited for judgment, waiting on its own punishment. Every sound made him think someone had come to take on his executing guard. Every quiet moment made him think for his mother's face. He remembered how she used to scold him for leaving tools in the rain. He remembered his title brother chasing chickens in the yard. He remembered the smoke rising for his village that day. Everything ended. He had joined Orhan camp because he had wanted revenge, but Hector and had found the softer place inside him and pressed a knife there. Nilufer came to see him after evening prayers. That guard stepped aside. Yusuf tried to stand, but she told him to sit. She brought a bowl of soup. She started at his hand, said he did not deserve it. Nilufer said, deserving food is not the question. A hungry man thinking poorly, and he still truly the gives. Yusuf took the ball, was shaking hand. He asked if Orhan would kill him. Nilufer did not lie. She said his crime was heavy. Man, he has died because of messages like the ones of carried, but the confessions had also saved life. Justice would wait. Both Yusuf lowered his head. He said he was afraid to die, but more afraid to live of his mother knew what he had done. Nilufer sat across from him. He said shame can become a grave or it can become a door if he only lay inside it. He was good road. If he walked through it, he would suffer, but the might still become useful to the trust. Yusuf cried quietly. Nilufer did not comfort him with soft lies. She let him cry because some tears clean the poisons from the heart. Before she left, she told him to pray not only for forgiveness but for courage to prepare what could be repaired. For our target party reached the farm near the northern road. It looked empty at first. A broken fence leaned in the mind. A small barn stood beside a dark house. Not lamp burned in the window, but Target did not trust emptiness. He signaled the men to spread out. One scout found fresh horses' marks near the back, and other found a pieces of rope cut recently. Moved close the van and heard a soft sound inside. Not an animal, a person trying not to cry. A door was locked from outside. Alkaline opened it with a thin blade inside. The smell was terrible. Three prisoners sat bored near the wall, an old woman, a young boy, and a wounded man who seemed half conscious. The man raised head slowly. Aktumar whispers Yusuf's name. Her eyes weathered. He began to shake. His mother, his boy beside her was brother. He was alive, but before October could free them, a horn sounded outside the farm. Had not been empty. Man rose for a ditch beyond the bend and fired a low toward the houses. One fell with an arrow in his shoulders. Target scouted the from shield. The rescue had picked up a trap, but not a perfect one. Hector man had expected Yusuf to come, or perhaps a smaller group. They had not expected Target himself. The old warrior moved like a storm given human shape. He charged through the side yard with two arms behind him. He struck the first attacker's shield and split it. Aktumur dragged the prisoner slow as arrow hit the barn wall above them. The wounded prisoners in the barn suddenly grabbed Aktumur's arms and whispered that there was oil near the back. Hector man planned to burn the ban if they could not hold it. Aktumar closes under his breath. He cut the ropes around Yusuf's mother and brother, then gave the woman a small knife. He told her to cut the wounded man free while he blocked the door. The young boy was too weak to stand well, so Aktumur lifted him over his shoulders outside. Turgid has pushed the attack back, but more came from the dry ditch. They were not many, perhaps 12, but they knew the ground. One threw a firepot toward the barn. It broke near the corner and flames began to crawl up the dry wood. The wound inside carried out. Aktumar shouted for water, but there was none close enough. He had to choose quickly. He pushed the woman and wounded man toward and his side opening, then carried the boy through smoke. An arrow cut across his arm, but his did not stop. Turgid saw the flames and changed the fight. Instead of holding ground, the orders a heartbreak toward the horses. The goal was no longer to capture men, it was to leave with the prisoners alive. The Arabs formed a moving wall around Yusuf's family. Hector men tried to close in, but Turgid struck left and right, roaring like he was a young man. One attacker escaped to close Yusuf's mother. She used the knife Aktumur had given her and cut his hand. It was not a warrior strike, but it was enough. The man screamed and an ox knocked him down. The party escaped into the dark with the prisoners. They lost one horse and carried one wounded ass between two riders. Behind them, the formed hound burned. The flames rose into the night like a single. Turgid looked back once and knew Hector would fear of the failure before long. Would let him know that fear did not on every road. At the camp, Yusuf was brought outside when the riders returned. He was Turgid first, then Aktumur, then the boy wrapped in a cloak. When a moment Yusuf did not move, his mind refused to believe what his eyes see. This his mother stepped down from a horse with help. She was weak, dirty, and old than his memory, but alive. Yusuf made a sound like a broken child and ran forward. The guard moved to stop, but Orhan, who has been come to meet their riders, raised his hand. Yusuf fell at his mother's feet and held the hem of her dress. He could not speak. His mother placed trembling hand on his head. She suffered because of Hector, but she did not yet know what Yusuf had done. Orhan did not allow the reunion to become a public show. He ordered Yusuf's family taken to Nilufar care. Yusuf was allowed to walk beside them under guard. People watched, whispered, some understood, some did not. Turgid went to Orhan and gave the report. The family was real, the trap was real, the farm was burned. One of Hector was man had been captured, badly wounded, and might speak of his life. Orhan looked towards Yusuf, who was helping his brother drink water. The young woman's guilt had now become heavier. Before he had betrayal for a possible lie. Now he knew his family had been alive, truly held by the enemy. This did not erase the betrayal, but it changed the shape of the wound. Hector had not only lied, he had built a cage from real love. Later, Last night Yusuf asked to speak to Orhan. He came with his head uncovered and his face wet with tears. He said his mother knew everything now. He had told himself. Orhan looked at him surprises. Many men hide shame even when trust is already near. Yusuf said he could not let her kiss his hand without knowing it was not is his mother had carried with them supplies his then held him. She had would rather had for enemy. Yusuf said he was ready for punishment, but begged Orhan for one chance before judgment. He wanted to enter the channel and carry false bait to Hector men. He knows their sign now. He knows how they spoke to him. He could have trapped the inner circle. Turgot said it was too dangerous. A young who had carried already been turned could be turned again. Yusuf expected this and said he would go with a rope around his waist if needed. He would go unarmed. He would go with a guard knife at his back. But he wanted to repair something with his own hand. Orhan studied him for a long time. The campfire moved his Yusuf's eyes. Fear was still there, but something else had joined it. Resolve. Orhan said repair is not made with one brave act, it is made by walking the hard road after the brave act is over. Yusuf said he understood. Orhan allowed him to help, but not alone. He would be used only under watch and only when the plan was ready. Yusuf bowed so low his forehead nearly touched the ground, while the Turkish camp filled with trust and rescue Bursa sank deeper into life. By evening, the councils announced that Flavius had failed to retire and was now under suspicion of betrayal. The announcement was made in the main secure. Soldiers stood around the edge. Step unrest people listened with hungry face. Some shouted cruises at Flavius. Others stayed silent. A few who had known him as a hard but loyal commander looked confused. Lady Helena stood on balcony above the square and watched the crowd. Hector stood in the shadow below, listening to the anger rise. He did not smile openly. A man who smiled while other range may be noticed, but inside the was split. The something unexpected happened. A breaker named Markan, who has found one of Orhan messages, stepped forward from the crowd. He was born man with flowers still on his sleeves. His wife tries to pull him back. He raised his voice and asked when he Consul spoke only to Flavius and not of the grain hidden in rich pillars. The squares became quiet. Marx held up the messages he had found. He said the truth promised safety to people who did not fight. He asked his consul promised the same. Soldiers moved toward him at once. The crowd stilled. Some called Merker at fall. Others shouted that the spoken trust a man realized that her children had not eaten bread in 2 days. While merchants still filled their dogs, Lady Helena faced handed Hector saw danger, not military danger, but something rose people beginning to speak to from their own pain instead of their had prepared them. He singled one of his men. He manly slipped through the crowd, drew a knife and stabbed Merkel in the side. Then he shouted that he Turks had paid him to spread lies. Joy broke out. Merkers fell. His wife screamed. People pushed in every direction. Soldiers grabbed any more holding paper. The messages from Orhan was torn in half, but not before many saw it. Hector man tried to despair, but a young city guard city arms. The guard has seen knife for a moment. Trust had a witness. Hector reacted quickly. He pointed and shouted that his guard was part of the same Turkish plot. Other soldiers, confused and frightening, seized the guard too. The scared became a place of fear again. But the damage has been done. The people had heard the questions. Why did the consuls fear a message promising safely? The were rich store guarded while children went hungry. Why did every problem become the fault of someone not present? Questions are like seed. Even if birds crushes the first green leaf, more may grow under the soil. That night Marcus did not die. His wife and two friends carried him secretly to the old chapel where a priest with tired eyes cleaned the wound. The priestess has also seen Orhan messages. He did not know how Turkish could be trusted. He had heard stories of rain, fire and wars, but he also knows the consuls had lied about grain. He knows Hector Manware was not held defenders of the city. He knows where the city Boran, Sikh and Merkan slept with forever. The prettiest took the tone half Orhan messages and in a hide a prayer book back in the Turkish camp. A second message came from inside Bursa through the channel. It was not from Orhan man. It was written in Rub Greek and carried by a young boy who knew only that he would receive bread if he brought old water. Stone messages said, the old preached us. The councils called them poison. Some believe, some fear. Breakers stable grain in hidden. If you promise safety, prove it can. Orhan had the messages translated, twisted to be curtain. Then he sat alone for a short while. Prove it again. The world were simple, but they carried the weight of a city. The people of Bursa did not love him. Why would they? For fear. His army had stood outside their wall. They had heard their leaders call him a destroyer. They had lost men a battle. They had betrayal for the Turks to leave. One message could not change that. Mercury once could be called a trick. Mercury twist might still be doubt. Mercury many times could become a rod. Nilüfer entered and found him holding the messages. Should ask what he could do. Orhan said the city wanted proof. Nilüfer said hungry people understand bread better than promise. Orhan looked up. Bread, it was simple, dangerous and powerful. If they could send food into Bursa through the channel, not the soldiers but the poor families, the consuls would be exposed. But the channel was narrow. They could not see it much. Even a little bread throw could carry a message larger than its weight. By down women in the Turkish camp were baking flat loaves. The floor came from Orhan on supply. Some commanders dislike using food for people inside enemy cities while their own sign might last longer. Orhan listened, they said every loaf set through that channel was alone a weapon, but all not a weapon of cruelty. It would strike Hector light target agree. He said an arrow kill one man, but beard give at the right time can open 100 locked hair. The love whispered in clean cloth. With smile not the note said the food was for children. He sick and families without store. They said no one would be for the chance fair. Leave home of surrender's honor if his city opened peacefully. They said those harmed messengers or stole food from the poor would answer when justice came. The waters were firm but not hateful. Orhan wanted the people to feel both safety and strength. Mercury without strength came by ignore strength without mercury becomes terrors. Yusuf was allowed to help carry the bread to the channel entrance though he was not sent inside yet. His mother, still weak, watched from beside Nilufar. She had asked to see what her own would do. Yusuf carried the bundles carefully if each roof were a chance to breathe again. His little brother sat wrapped in a blanket and looked at the warrior with wide eyes. He did not understand political betrayal or science. He understood only that he was no longer in a dark van. The pair reached Bursa before noon. It appeared first near the old water house, then near the chapel. The priestess found one bounded and gave the first loaf for Matthews. Why she sweat like breaking it for children. Orhan came quietly, no bells rang, no public speeches were made. The food moved hand to hand, hidden under shawl and inside baskets. Some people feared it was poison and was old woman ate first and waited when she did not fall. Others ate to hunger, defeated suspicions faster than world flew. Soon the consul here, Lady Helena, was furious not because the beard was much, but because it made her stores look cruel. Hector's advice are harsh answers. Anyone found with Turkish bread should be punished at a cluster. Some council's members agreed, but the old priestess from the councils warned that punishing hungry wanted that punishing children for eating bread would turn the city against them. Lady Helena argued that a law Turkish gift flawed weakens loyalty. The priestess asked what loyalty means. A mother whose child was starving while grain rooted behind locked door. The room erupted. Hector watched carefully. He saw that Orhan move had cut deeper than expected. The trust had not attacked the wall they had attacked, the wall that held the walls together. He needed two answers with something stronger than rumors. He noted blood that could be blamed on Orhan. His chance came with the captured city guard, the one who had seen Marcus David. The guard name was Alcis. He was young, honest, and now dangerous because he knew Hector meant Then the stepping actor visiting him in the holding room beneath the brackets alive. Try to cheers birds with a live Hector dismissed the two guards and spoke gently at first. He said confusion has filled the scare. He said Alice might have seen wrongly. He said if Eleni aside a statement saying merchant has been stapled by another baker's by the Turkish he would by feed area refuse Hector sighed like a disappointment teacher. Then that step closer and haste honest in noble only when it does not kill your family. Alias went still. Hector smiled softly. Yes, he knows about the sister who lived near the western step. He knew about the father who could not longer walk. He knew enough. Elenis closed his eyes. Hector placed a paper before him. By morning, the city wondered here that Turkish against had caused the violence in the squares. Elias only had to sign. Elias whispered that Hector were the traitors. Hector landed close and said, "Less transitions belongs to the man Zosis." Then they left the room and ordered his men to bring Elias' sister. But Elias had one friend among the guard, a quiet man named Petros. Petros has listened outdoor the door not to betray anyone, but because the feared was happened to the city. When he heard Hector's order, he understood that Bursa was being eaten from inside. That inside Petros helped Alina escaped through a refuse passage near the breakers. Alia wounded and weak, but the carried one thing, the unsigned statement he Hector on prepared word. If that paper reached Orhan or the right people inside Bursa, it could expose the lie. Patrols could not live with him. Someone had to delay pursuit. He gave Elos a cloak and to find the old water path. Alina did not know it. Alina's a cloak and told him to find the old water path. Elias did not know if the Turks did kill him. Patrol said staying will surely kill him. He saw Elias run into the darkest street of his own city like a stranger. Behind him comes well behind to ring in the Turkish camp. Orhan was speaking with Osman when the channel guard brought news near then a family Turkish around camel through the water road asking for Flavius. The enemy made Orhan stand. At once Flavius was brought under guard. When he was Eleni, his face changed. He knew the young man Elias has once served near the lawyer gate. He was lawyer not cleared through for deepest plot for bust. Honest Eleni tried to knees and failed. He gave Flavius the paper and said Hector waited him to sign a line that then he fainted. The paper was translated in the consul's stand. It accuses Turkish again of stabbing merchants and spreading false bread to poison the city. Loyalty if had spaces for Alia's signature and the real of the backers. The wording was careful, too careful. It named even before they had been officially investigated. It proved that Hector had prepared a lie before the trust could speak. Orhan looked at Flavius. Flavius said could turn some in Bursa against Hector, but only it entered the city again with witness. A paper alone could be denied. Alas, alive could speak. Marcos alive could speak. Petrol is still alive could speak. Orhan saw the next road. They noted they needed to bring trust into Bursa, not a whisper, but as a flame. Yet sending allies back was dangerous. He was wounded. The city grounded with haunt him. Hector would kill him before he reached any council's member. Fatma will quietly said Flavius and sent him. The tent turned toward her. She continued that some in Bursa might still trust Flavius, especially soldiers who serve under him. If Flavius gave a message, it might reach them. Target said Flavius could also use the chance to betray them. Fatma answers that he could, but wrote inward. The question was whether they would hold the rope tight enough. Orhan did not decide quickly. He looked at Flavius and asked if the wool tied to his shoulders. Flavius said yes. Orhan asked when he would say. Flavius said he would tell them that Hector had tied that the attacks on Osman was done uh, without honor, and that Bursa must not be handed to a man who sells fear. Orhan asked if would tell him to surrender. Flavors paused. Then he said no, yet he would tell the protect the people. The questions Hector Orhan almost smiled. It was an honest answer and not the answer of a man pretending to be fully changed. Flavius was not Flavius. He did not love Orhan. He did not want Bursa to fall, but the wanted Hector stopped. For now, that was enough. A plan was made. Ilyas would remain hidden and treated by Nilufar. A copy of Hector's false statement would be made. Flavius would write a sealed letter to three officers who might still trust him. Orhan men would send both through the channel with bread and medicine. The messages would ask those offered to find Morak, protect patrols if possible, and demand a close council where Hector would be questioned. It was a thin air, but sometimes a city turns on a thread before a gate opened. Fatma was assigned to watch Flavius while he wrote. This was not by accident. As Orhan trusted her eyes, it Flavius tried to hide a second meaning in the letter. Fatma might notice his hesitation. They sat in a guarded tent with a small table between them. Flavius held the reed pen and looked at the blank paper for a long time. Fatma asked if he had forgotten his own language. He said he was deciding how much trust his city called fear. Fatma said trust does not become lighter because a proud man cuts in its spices. Flavius looked at her, said something too much trust, and once Mark man reached for sword instead of sense. She answered that lies has already done that. He began to write. He wrote were formal at first, the worst or commanders addressing officers. Then his hand slowed. He wrote then the had left the city because Hector planned murder outside the rules of war. He wrote that the attempt has failed. He wrote that the Turks held him, but he was alive because Orhan he has chosen judgment over revenge. Fatma noticed that he was just tightening when he wrote that lies. It cost him something to admit it. He continued saying Hector had turned cities against one another and used hunger for power. He did not ask the offer to love the Turks. He asked them to love Bursa. enough to stop the man eating it from inside. When the finished, Fatma read the translation. There was no hidden praise of Orhan, no false surrenders, no trick. She could see it was a hard letter from a hard man to other hard men, perhaps that made it stronger. She sealed it under Orhan authority and Flavius' marks. As she lifted the paper, Flavius said her brother had become a ruler faster than his enemies. Understood Fatma. Look at his sharply. She said it was not flattery. A commander's attack bodies, a ruler attack the reasons men keep fighting. Orhan was doing that now. Fatma answers that Osman Bey taught him. Flavius nodded and said Bursa had feared Osman for years. Perhaps they would have feared when he taught his son even more. The channel messengers left before dawn this time. Yusuf went this them, but not deep into Bursa. He guided them through the first dangerous turn, where Hector old sign were still carved on the stone. Then returned, then under guard. It was a small duty, but the perform it was care. But when he came back, his mother was waiting. She did not smile, but she touched his shoulders. For Yusuf, that touch was harder to receive than praises. Inside Bursa, the messages reached the right hand by fortune and courage together. One bundle was found by a soldier's lawyer to Flavius, a man named Dermine. At first the coach it was a trap, then he was the private mask on the seal at a marks only Flavius close officers know. He took the letter to other in secret. They read in a stable behind the lawyer Brackles while horses shifting beside them. One of them trusted the trucks, all of them trusted Flavius more than Hector. The paper prepared for Ilyas shocked them. It shows that Hector had planned the story before the city had been here. The full trusted Imran wanted to arrest Hector too once. Another offer warned that they did not have enough men. Hector had paid guard, consuls, allies, and street informed if they moved badly they would be killed as traitors. The wind moved over the plain like a hidden warning. It passes through the dry grass, touched the black tent of the sky, and reached the walls of Bursa before the sun had fully down. The sky was heavy. If he carried a secret that he does not want to